I would prefer to find a peaceful solution. If we could talk our way out of this one, that much the better.
Unfortunately, it may not be that simple.
What did you find out?
Ego structure does not seem to allow what we normally think of as self-identity. Their ability to abstract is highly unusual. They seem to communicate through narrative imagery, a reference to the individuals and places which appear in their mytho-historical accounts.
It's as if I were to say to you, Juliet on her balcony.
An image of romance.
Exactly. Imagery is everything to the Republicans. It embodies their emotional states, their very thought processes. It's how they communicate, and it's how they think.
If we know how they think, shouldn't we be able to get something across to them?
No, sir. The situation is analogous to understanding the grammar of a language, but none of the vocabulary.
If I didn't know who Juliet was, or what she was doing on that balcony, the image alone wouldn't have any meaning.
That's correct. For instance, we know that Darmok was a great hero, a hunter, and that Tanagra was a swamp. But that's it. Without the details, there's no understanding.
It is necessary for us to learn the narrative from which Republicans draw their imagery. Given our current relations, that does not appear likely.
Jordan?
Well, I guess, there was a little bit of discussion a couple of minutes ago about shaking people's worldviews. And it's not something to be done lightly. So if I'm very interested in what happens to people when their belief systems collapse, and not only what happens to people individually, but also socially. And so what I've learned about that's most profound, I think, probably came from turn-of-the-century thinkers like Nietzsche or Dostoevsky or Tolstoy, who were very much concerned about the demolition of belief structures. And Nietzsche, the philosopher, is a real interesting case in point, because he's the originator of the famous phrase, God is dead. But that isn't the phrase. That's just the phrase that people like to remember. The phrase is, God is dead, and we have killed him, and there won't be enough water to wash away the rivers of blood. And the rest of that phrase is a prophecy for the 20th century that he wrote 25 years before the 20th century began, stating quite clearly that he believed that hundreds of millions of people would be killed in the 20th century because of the decline of standard religious beliefs. That people would turn, in particular, and he prophesied this as well, in particular they would turn to communism. So, none of this is a game.
Is that what you're saying?
And then the Tower of Babel is a very interesting story. It's very, very short. And what happens is that it just starts pretty much abruptly after the flood story ends. And it's a story about the decision that human beings take to build a mighty building, like a huge, huge edifice that would reach all the way up to the heavens to supplant God, roughly speaking. And so what happens is the building is built higher and higher and higher and higher, and God gets annoyed about this and divides everyone who's building the building into small groups who speak different languages, who then disperse, and the construction project comes to a halt. Now, it's a very strange story, but here's one way of thinking about it. The larger you build a system, the more there's a proclivity to worship it as if it's everything. That's the story of ideology, let's say. You want to build a comprehensive utopian system that supplants anything transcendent. You want to build it as large as possible so it encompasses everyone. Well, what happens as it grows? Well, it incorporates more and more people, but the people within it become more and more different from one another. And so, essentially, they start speaking different languages. And so the entire project of raising this massive edifice to supplant everything disperses into chaos and comes to a halt. Okay, so that's one story. So here's another story.
As always, Trump has managed to gain allies.
Now, wait a minute, Commissioner.
Even if they don't recognize themselves as being such. Yes, he will evade, delay, and escape again, and in the process put thousands of innocent beings at each other's throats, getting them to kill and maim for a cause which they have no stake in, but which he will force them to violently espouse by twisting their minds with his lies, his loathsome accusations, and his foul threats.
I can assure you, Commissioner, that Our minds will not be twisted, not by
Trump.
nor by you.
It is obvious the most simple-minded
Trump.
is of an inferior breed.
The obvious visual evidence, Commissioner, is that he is of the same breed as yourself.
Are you blind, Commander Spock? Well, look at me. Look at me.
You're black on one side and white on the other.
I am black on the right side.
I fail to see the significant difference.
Trump.
White on the right side. All of his people are white on the right side.
I hope I'm not intruding.
No, of course not, number one. Please.
Damage report's ready for your review. Thank you.
Greek, sir. Oh. The Homeric hymns, one of the root metaphors of our own culture.
For the next time we encounter
The Republic.
More familiarity with our own mythology might help us to relate to theirs.
The Republic
Was willing to risk all of us, just for the hope of communication, connection. Now the door is open between our peoples. That commitment meant more to him than his own life. Thank you, number one.